Hi everyone. My name is Delel Chaabouni, and I advise boards, family business owners, and CEOs on de-risking senior new hires or preparing executives for succession. I do that through coaching and mentoring. In today's context, leadership requires building AI savviness and an agentic mindset. So the subject of our conversation in the next 45 minutes or so is going to be how C-suite leaders build AI savviness and an agentic culture. Why is that important? Well, we all hear that AI is already reshaping how companies operate at executive level. Leaders who do not build personal fluency and organizational culture will fall irreversibly behind those who do. And I'm happy to be joined with a guest today called Ben Legg. Just a little bit about Ben. Ben helps CEOs envision and engineer their AI-powered future. His career trajectory spans the British Army, including relief operations in Sarajevo, McKinsey. He was also general manager of Coca-Cola India, COO of Google Europe, and multiple private equity back-end CEO roles. He now focuses on three interlocking streams: advising CEOs on building agentic companies, consulting Wall Street investors on AI-driven value creation and destruction, and keynote speaking on the future of agentic organization. He's based between London and New York, lived in 9 countries, and worked in 60. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Delel. Really good to be here.
Thank you for being here. And I have to say, we've had various conversations in the past weeks, which I really, really enjoyed. Most importantly, what I enjoyed most is your passion. Your passion is very contagious. And that's why I'm happy that you accepted that we do this conversation together and we record it, because I think a lot of people can benefit from it. So thanks for doing that.
My pleasure.
So, Ben, my first question is, your career background is a bit unusual. So you've went from the British Army to McKinsey, Coca-Cola, Google, and now you decided to help CEOs build agentic companies. What made you define this as the work you want to do with the next chapter of your career?
So, as you said, my career, sort of every decade or so, I've changed career, often because I've got bored and there's a bigger adventure somewhere else. So I am a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I like to go where things are difficult. I love growth. I like turnarounds. I like excitement. I like really difficult intellectual challenges. And I just think AI is probably the biggest thing hitting the world over the next few years. And it's hard. It's not easy. Everyone's allowed to get confused here. That's one of the first things is there is no instant playbook. I will help people, but we're all making this up and AI changes every day. And therefore how we work should change every day. And so it's like there are opportunities and threats everywhere. We need to rethink how we work. We need to rethink society. We need to rethink education, healthcare. AI affects everything. This isn't just a minor technological upgrade. It's a rewiring of how the world works. And that just gets me excited.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, before I move forward, we talk about agentic. What do you mean by agentic?
Yeah, so I'll try and break it down. So agentic basically means using agents in the right way. Now, so then we need to take a step back and say, what is an agent? So an agent is basically where you say, I don't want to use the generic AI. So I don't just want to type something into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and get a standard answer. I want to build my own little AI work machine, bot, call it what you like, agent basically, that I can train up, and it will get better because it will learn more about the task, the context. It will understand rules, guidelines, standards. And anyone can build an agent, and we'll demystify that in the call because it takes about 20 minutes to build a decent agent. Maybe 20 minutes to build a basic one, a couple of hours to build a good one. But it's when you do that, and then you start having, when you think about work will be done by a mixture of humans and agents. And each time you think about a task, you think, what am I going to give to humans? What am I going to give to agents? And then the destination of agents or agentic is where you don't just build lots of agents that work for you, you build agents that work with each other as well.
Wow, fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, some people understand AI, they use ChatGPT, they use Claude, they ask
Mm-hmm.
questions and that they think that's AI. But I think when you talk about agentic, you're talking about the execution. So they really
Yeah. Big
execute
time.
that. And we'll come a
Absolutely.
little bit to some of the examples on that.
Yeah.
So I remember in our talks, you talked about, and we hear, in the press, in the media,
Mm-hmm.
companies having engineering headcount, Series A money going as
Mm-hmm.
far as Series B used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So for a CEO sitting in a board meeting this quarter, what's the single sharpest signal that this is not a technology trend, but a business model disruption?
Yeah. So let's start with some really basic stuff, okay? If you get everyone in your organization using AI with minimal training, just permission to use AI and basics, they will become 10% more productive. Like saving 4 hours a week or generating 10% more output every week is easy. It takes about a week. So the first thing is, why wouldn't you do it? 10% improvement in productivity is amazing, but it gets better from there because when you then build an agentic culture where everyone's using AI, they then start using AI to teach them more AI. They start building agents. So your workforce expands not just with humans, which have a high cost, but agents that have a low cost. So you end up just making your machine run better, faster, more efficiently, etc. But the other thing is you can then potentially with AI, depending on what you do in your what industry you're in, you can build more interesting products. You can, personalize your customer experience in ways that you could never do with human processes. So there's opportunities galore. But the other thing to bear in mind here is there's threats too, because if you don't become agentic and your competitors do, basically you're in slow decline and your business will be dead within a few years, depending on how much cash flow you've got right now, etc. So it's a death sentence to not do it. It's an amazing opportunity if you do it, and then you get into so theoretically everyone says they're getting into AI. So therefore, how fast can you move to get ahead?
It's interesting that you talk about this because I remember when towards the last years of university,
Mm.
1995, I studied computer science in Germany,
Hmm.
and I got a student job, developing on Mosaic at that time. The internet
Right.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
still, coming out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we still had fax machines. Do you remember the fax
Wow, I
machine?
do remember those. Yeah, my father-in-law still has one in his basement. Yeah,
Okay, in the basement because nobody uses them anymore. But that's the
exactly.
thing is that some people
Yeah,
hang on to the fax machine and didn't want to,
yeah, yeah.
embrace the mail.
Just in
But
case. Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, exactly. Ultimately, the fax. But I think AI, as you say, the return is exponential because it's not only
Mm,
about productivity. Yes,
mm,
replacing some tasks that humans do, but
mm,
also when you leverage a whole, the whole employees doing that, you get
yeah,
actually much faster to
absolutely.
your
Absolutely.
competition. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it makes sense. And I liked one thing you told me during our conversations. You said AI makes smart people smarter and less
Hmm.
skilled people more dependent. What does that
Yes.
mean for a CEO who's managing a mixed capability leadership team?
Yeah. So if I start with that statement, I think the impact of AI on society in some ways is similar to social media, in making smart people smarter and dumb people dumber. And what do I mean by that? The output of AI is typically a B grade these days.
Hmm?
Like it's quite good. People that would have got a C will use AI, not check the output because it's better than they would have done themselves, accept it. They don't even know why that was the right answer, the right deliverable. So their brain turns to mush because, in essence, they haven't been through any kind of thinking process to get to that B. Not realizing that all companies in the world now will always get at least a B because effectively AI gives you a B. The smart people will look at the B and say, that's not good enough. And then they will say, how can I use AI more intelligently? How can I find better data? How can I connect different agents in different ways? How can I talk to a human, to improve the output? And they'll basically raise the bar and challenge, and they get smarter because they end up with a better output than they could do without AI. And so you end up with like, one of the things as you think about, you asked about the team, if you don't have a team that's not just using AI, but raising the bar on AI and saying, I can do better, you'll end up with people sinking down to effectively failure because they're just leveraging AI for everything. Whereas if you've got people that always take the output of AI, and it's never good enough. It's never good enough. Version one of an output from AI, I have not. I use AI a lot. Like, I've got about 20 agents running while we're doing this call. The first output's never good enough. But if you get someone who can really say, yeah, I'm going to improve on that, then you end up just, the sky is the limit as to what you can achieve. So it really is creating this sort of bifurcation, if that's the right word, of society, of managers, of workers. And, if you're leading a business, you want every single person in your management team to be someone that can take AI and raise the bar rather than accept AI's outputs.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I'm hearing is it's that judgment that still needs to
Mhm.
be there, that
Yeah,
challenging, it's not taking it at
absolutely.
face
Yeah.
value. And I think, coming back to some people saying AI will replace, there's always a human
Mm.
side that
Yeah.
needs to
Big
challenge,
time.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Big
so
time. If
so yeah,
if you have AI do everything, in essence, you get a reliable B grade for everything. But the reality is that's not how you create value. It might
yeah.
be how you strip out waste, but it's not how you create a differentiated product or service.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that judgment and creativity will still remain human?
Big time. I think if you think about in a world where all the routine stuff, all the things that can be written in a manual will kind of get automated simplistically. And what does that leave? It leaves reimagining things. Yeah, things could be better. It means designing new things where it means empathizing with customers, understanding their pain points, their opportunities, etc. It means fixing things, because the plumbing can always be improved. It means judging, like judging the quality of the output and working out, is it good enough? It requires ethics, working out if you've got a machine recommending decisions, which ones do you accept, which ones do you refuse? Storytelling, always a phenomenal skill. And then other stuff that really just is very hard for computers to do, like educating young kids and things like that. But it's like there's those are all the skills I think that will make us all employable and value adding in the future. Whereas doing stuff within a prescribed system, no good. And so anyone now waiting to be told how to use AI is already falling behind. They're the kind of people that one day will be automated. People need to be raising the bar on themselves and their organizations.
Yeah, that's fascinating and key as well because it completely changes the landscape on new hires, on even developing people,
Oh yeah.
learning and
Hmm.
development and so on. So
Yeah.
and I remember when we were talking about AI agents and so on, and I was bringing my cases to you and we were discussing them.
Yeah.
You said something which stuck with me actually. You said, try to consider AI agents like fresh graduates. So they're
Hmm.
highly intelligent, they have absolutely no common sense and no experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you unpack that a little bit for a CEO who has
Yeah.
never managed an AI agent? What's that
I,
mean?
I will, yeah, because this is where really, I think to me, this is a good mental model to understand the difference between generic AI and agents. So I'm sure listeners will have all hired a new graduate. And what do you get? You get an enthusiasm, a brain, some kind of vague academic skills in the background. With generic AI, you also have access to the entire internet and they don't sleep and they don't complain about their mental health, etc. So there's some other positives. But they don't know how the business works. They don't know the business context. They don't know how you work. They don't know what your standards are. They don't know how to communicate appropriately. They don't know how to fit within brand guidelines. There's a whole lot of stuff they don't know. So when you take a new graduate, you give them an induction and you give them training and you give them tasks. When they bring back the task, deliverable, you challenge them and you raise the bar and then you say, what did you learn and what will you do differently next time? And over a few months, they start becoming really helpful and effective. After a year or two, they're amazing. Now, an agent is a bit like what you do with graduates, but you can do it faster. So effectively, day one, of an agent, you basically get the generic version of ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. You get the average of the internet. But then you say, with an agent, you say, okay, here, so go through all my emails from the last 5 years, learn my communication style, tell me what you've learned, and then you give them a test. Okay, now draft an email for me. Or you say, okay, you've now got access to my calendar. Look at how I spend my time. Look at how I organize meetings. What have you learned that you can do differently? Or if it's with research, say, okay, here's 5 research reports from the past. That's how I like my research reports. What have you learned? And again, and then you give them a task. And before you know it, these agents are basically doing amazing quality work because you've told them the standard, you've whipped them into shape. Now, again, I'm saying agents. I realize some people might still be thinking agents sounds complicated. I need to be a computer scientist. You can build an agent with just your voice. And it really is simple. So if I give a simple example, on Claude, an agent is typically called a project. On Gemini, it's called a gem. On ChatGPT, it's called a custom GPT. You just literally click a button that says create a new gem, create a new custom GPT. And then you talk. Okay, your purpose is X, Y, and Z. It's like a job description. And then you say, for your induction, I'd like you to do these tasks. You make them do the tasks. Then you learn and iterate, and then every day you give them a few tasks. Some will be routine, like they're fixed at certain times in the calendar. Some will be one-off. And just every single time, every single output, you don't accept what they give you. You check it, give feedback, make sure whatever they've learned, they put it back into their permanent memory. So you need to be quite OCD about making sure that every new task is a learning opportunity. But once you've given feedback 2 or 3 times, sometimes 4 or 5 if it goes wrong, they get it right. And then it's like, great, they're doing 5 or 10 things amazingly, and I'll work on what's next. Or you might, as some say, that agent's great, I'll build a different agent for a different purpose.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
But
sounds
sorry, if I can quickly whiz back, if you don't build agents, let's think about that, okay?
Yeah.
If you keep using the generic version of ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, you will only have a context window, it's called, of either 500,000 or 1 million tokens. That means they can only remember so much stuff. So as you give them new tasks, they forget what happened with the old tasks.
Okay.
That is the equivalent of every day hiring a new fresh graduate with no context.
Okay.
And their output never gets better than day one. How bad is that?
It is bad, yeah. Yeah. But you need a lot of patience as well, right? Because with people you would say, okay.
I don't know. I'm quite impatient, but I will put the time in because I really want them to learn fast. So I normally go down a whole rabbit hole of I'm going to train you in a day, and I'm not going to let you go until your output is according to the right standard, which frustrates me. But then I love the output, and I think because I've done it a few times now, I'm excited about where I can get these agents to.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But also, I think, given the technology is also evolving, I think even getting frustrated with things that don't work today, probably in 4 or 5 weeks, they would work. Because the speed in which the development is being done right now is just mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, that is kind of annoying. I realize some of the things I'm training agents in, they will turn up with that as the default in 3 months' time. But I'm trying to sort of stay on the cutting edge and push things. And also we can't wait. Maybe some of those problems won't be fixed for a year and you can't keep waiting.
So I see that you are passionate about it. Does it mean that it needs a little bit of this geekiness? So being
Big
geeky.
time.
Yeah.
So I genuinely believe now all organizations pretty much need to build a geek culture where everyone is a geek. And otherwise, 10, 20 years ago, being a geek was seen as a bit derogatory. You were kind of hiding in a corner writing code. Now I think everyone needs to be a geek because what happens is there is no playbook here. You can't say, here's how we use AI because AI gets better every day. Therefore, how you use it should change every day. You can't send people off to university. Most university courses were designed 3 years ago. Well, 3 years ago is just about when ChatGPT hit the market and no one really knew what it was. So you have to learn on the job. And how do you do that? By constantly trying to use AI and then chatting with other people. And I also think something's really helpful is use AI in your personal life and in work because the skill set's pretty similar. And so if you're geeking out with AI, like I've built a storyteller app for my young kids. And every night we brainstorm what story we want. Typically, they want to be superheroes and save the world kind of thing. But what story do they want? We then get a story with forks in the road where we have to make decisions. Then we are given a comic book style, set of images for the story. It's wonderful. So I'm basically developing agents at home, but the skill set applies at work. So the more we use AI at home and at work and share what we're doing, the faster we all learn.
And I love how you involve your kids as well from an early
Oh
age.
yeah,
I mean, we're gonna
yeah,
have the AI natives anyway, right? So for them, it's
we
gonna be
will.
like, yeah, like the
Yeah, but
iPhone
although
natives.
I think my observation is almost all schools and universities are still hardly touching AI, which is very scary because if you think about the future of work, every single person needs to be a power user of AI. And so school and university need to get that memo and they haven't yet. So I think
Yeah.
one of the other really important reasons why we all need to become power users of AI is because we can teach our kids. I think
Yes.
for the next 3 to 5 years at least, schools and universities won't keep up and maybe never. And so how are our kids going to learn AI? It's at home. Who are they going to learn from? Their parents.
Yes. And I think we can have another episode on education systems and the
Yeah, well,
gaps
I'm sure we could.
between
Yeah, I would
between
love to fix an education system. Yeah, not that I have any answers, but it's like it needs fixing big time.
yeah, they are a bit like dinosaurs, right? So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't keep up very fast. So as you say, I
Mm,
think there is that self-development part. People need
mm,
to really learn by themselves. Absolutely. Now,
mm,
one thing that actually, I remember from one of our conversations when we started talking about AI and agents and so on.
mm.
You told me that you have a human chief of staff
Yeah.
and an AI chief of staff, which
Yes.
was
Yeah.
which was really interesting. So I'm really interested to know, what each one handles and
Yeah.
what can the AI version do that the human cannot, and vice versa.
Yeah. So basically, simplicity, I run a small consulting firm with 6 people. So it's nice and small and manageable. And one of those is the chief of staff. Now, but I also am a big power user of Claude Cowork, which is kind of like my digital chief of staff. And as much as we can, we have automated pretty much every single bit of routine work. So, for example, a random one is I need to keep an eye on the share prices and the reasons for the ups and downs of all the hyperscaling tech companies. It's just important information. You can automate all of that with agents and routines and other
Yeah,
things. So
yeah,
there's a whole load of stuff that is routine, which basically means every time some work comes in, yeah, and a work for me could be a speech, a client project, a think tank, all sorts of stuff, building something technical. Well, so right, this is a project. The first thing I do is I have a brainstorm with Claude, my number one AI, my AI middle management, let's say. What's the best way to get this done? What's the right split of human and AI? And then we'll divide and conquer. So, Claude will go and then manage other agents. So this is very much agentic workflows, doing research, let's say, or building V1 of a slide deck. Whereas my human chief staff will start doing stakeholder management with clients or some of the more complex project management or managing some agents herself because Claude isn't doing a good job. And we all kind of collaborate together. And it's just a great way of getting stuff done. And so, that simplistically, where AI normally works best in my world is things like market research, basic number crunching, not complicated stuff. Um, Sort of good project outline work. What else would be ones? Creative, like making images, etc. The human stuff is almost all stakeholder management, even though Claude can maybe give me backgrounds on people, but actually having meetings, running meetings, listening properly, following up. Even again, you can have an AI note taker. There's lots of good things that AI can help, but it's human first AI supported. Whereas a lot of the desk work can be done by AI. But because AI gets better every day, literally
yeah.
I'm clicking refresh on AI, every single day, we basically need to rethink how we do things every day.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It sounds to me like there is like a back end function and a front end function, more on the
Yeah, yeah.
relationship and what we think of back end. But obviously, some of the back end things might need more thinking and scoping and so on. So
Yeah, yeah.
once you figure them out, you might be able to give them to agents as well.
Yeah.
And as you say,
But
things
yeah.
evolve. So
Exactly. That's a nice way of framing it is that back end is probably 80% AI, 20% human. Front end is probably 80% human, 20% AI. Is probably about right. Which, and maybe that will change, but if it settles that way, that probably makes sense. Humans deal with other humans. AI does all the boring stuff in the back end that humans didn't like doing anyway.
yeah, that's interesting. And if I may ask, I mean, obviously these back-end activities were done by humans for you, whether fractional
Yeah.
or full-time. What was the benefit that you have achieved from moving some of this stuff to AI agents?
Mhm. So there's quite a lot. So the biggest one is just time saving. So
Hmm.
and obviously time saving ultimately it's either money, you can either do things faster or save money or both.
Hmm.
So I used to spend several hours a week literally doing Google searches and finding articles and doing research and distilling my notes. Um, that is now all AI driven. Um, and now I still need to ultimately get the learning, but finding the right website, finding the nuggets, pulling it together, highlighting the key parts is AI. Actually, I have a very nice habit now. So I don't know if you've used Notebook LM. Actually, you have because we shared notebooks. But Notebook LM, for people who maybe haven't used it, it's a Google product and it does lots of stuff. But one of the best things in my mind is it can make you a podcast. So basically, I love podcasts, but often when I get to the end of third-party podcasts, I get to the end and think, I love that, but I only needed 20% of it. With NotebookLM, you can make exactly the podcast you want. So let's say, for example, I'm about to take on a new client, and it's the CEO of a healthcare company. I can basically get all of the earnings documents, all the speeches from the CEO, all the podcasts, all the analyst reports, all the journalist reports about the company, upload it into a Notebook LM. Then typically they'll send me some stuff as well under NDA so I can upload the confidential stuff. And then I can have a podcast where host one is the CEO of the healthcare company, host two is me. And the podcast will create a conversation where the CEO is talking about their business, what's working, what's not. The other host, the fake me, is asking questions, bringing ideas from outside. They have an amazing conversation. I build this podcast, but it takes about 3 minutes all in to build the podcast. I go for a walk and I'm listening to the conversation I'm about to have with a new client. Um, and one of the bits of feedback I've had over the last few months, when I've been doing this, is you turn up and behave as if you've worked in the company for 20 years. So
Amazing.
that's both efficiency and effectiveness to turn up and behave like an insider. But I've literally just listened to a conversation of fake me and fake CEO,
That's
discussing their business.
incredible. I mean, that's a fascinating use case that you're doing just to speed up the process of ingesting that information. I'll call it up.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
would almost
Yeah.
call it a knowledge injection using AI
Yes. Yeah.
agents
Yeah.
because they're
And
very
it's
good
fun
at
too. And I get some
scrolling
steps in.
across a
So
lot of
yeah,
data.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how it can ingest it.
Yeah,
Other things like with, let's say, presentations, 'cause I do like 2 or 3 keynote speeches
yeah,
a week. So, and the keynote speeches aren't the time-consuming bit, it's preparing the slides. But AI can do a good set of research and V1. I'm very fussy with slides. So I don't know if there'll ever be AI good enough on its own. But I can say, look, I need to do a speech that looks like this, and this. Here are some ideas I've got. I'm sure I'm missing stuff. Go and do some research, pull it together, and we'll iterate 2 or 3 times, me with AI, and it will come up with, these are the 30 slides with a reasonable title, etc. But the slides are clunky and ugly. And then I flick to human and I have a graphic artist and a content specialist who's an ex strategy consultant, and they work with me. But getting the what on earth am I going to say is me and AI. Turning it into something that's beautiful and understandable and distinctive is me and 2 humans, but they use AI too. So it's AI enabled, but getting up and running is an amazing. Doing the hard work is probably 50% better than before, whereas the early research is probably 80% better than before. It's like, it's a lot better.
yes, and it gets better and better actually.
Yeah.
So Ben, if you had to write a book titled The Agentic CEO, oh, wait a
Mhm.
second, I think you told me you want to.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
What would be the core argument? I mean, what does an agentic CEO do differently on a day-to-day basis from
Yeah.
a traditional CEO?
Yeah, so this is my planned summer project to write a book. Probably the placeholder title is the Agentic CEO. So a lot of my work is working with CEOs, helping them build an agentic business. But what I've realized is they need to make themselves agentic in order to make their businesses agentic. And so I think there's going to be three parts to the book. The first is what is AI and how do you make your business agentic? And ultimately that's the business rationale, and really helping people work out, well, what do you need to do with culture? How do you capture the quick wins? How do you tackle the bigger AI opportunities? How do you use AI for, competitor analysis? All the things, there's like a whole, that's what you would expect in this book, is like, how do you turn a business agentic? But I think there'll be two other parts. One is, as a CEO, how do you become agentic? And then the second is, how do you use AI to make your personal life better? Again, CEOs that are always time poor, this is probably gonna be a 100-page book or 120-page book, or and maybe with a refresh every 90 days on what's new. But for example, as a CEO, you can think through using AI to make board meetings more effective, using AI to organize your life more effectively. Even though, again, most chief CEOs have a chief of staff, but it's like a chief of staff plus AI is much better than just one or the other. How do you use AI to organize your email? I have an email triage agent that literally crawls my emails 3 times a day and deletes and unsubscribes from the rubbish stuff, sends quick responses automatically, and drafts other emails for me. So things like that. And so there's like 15 or 20 hacks to make your work life more efficient, effective, etc. And then the final one is just in the back end is, what can you do in your own life? I think a lot of CEOs, again, they get home, they're knackered, but actually you can use AI to plan weekends, plan trips, be a better parent, all sorts of other stuff, plan Christmas better, improve your health. I have one of my AI agents is my personal doctor, and trainer, and it knows more about me than any human has ever done, and pulls it all together to give really amazing advice. It also puts in a half-hour check-in every month, so I upload more data when we have a chat, and then I get more advice. But there's a whole load of things to do in your personal life, and again, coming back to that, if you're using AI at home, you'll be more effective at work too. So it shouldn't be a work only thing or a home only thing. That if you do it in both, you get better at both.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think, I mean, to the healthcare side, at least, obviously some of the things to remind you, but at least as well, it helps with the kind of formulating the questions you can ask your doctor.
Oh yeah.
Because
Big
I
time.
don't want to say you'd be replacing medical
Yeah,
doctors, but at least you learn a lot more, and you become more savvy in asking the right questions,
big
I
time.
guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about, a lot of, I love the fact that you're thinking of this book of being more of a practical playbook as well,
Oh
not
yeah.
only about theory. So coming
Hmm.
to that, if a CEO wanted to personally become AI savvy in 90 days, not
Hmm.
just informed, but
Yeah,
genuinely hands-on, what would you tell them to
yeah.
do in week one?
So in week one, I would say just start building some very basic agents. Literally, I could show them a list, and they could pick from the list. But some of the obvious ones are an agent to manage your email, or an agent to manage your calendar, or an agent to do research for you, or an agent to prepare for and run board meetings. There are some really straightforward agents that you can build. Each of them is like 20 minutes to get up and running, and maybe an extra hour or two over the next week just to polish them up. I'd probably encourage them to build an agent in their home life to, start becoming that sort of geeky CEO that we need. Whether that's a storytelling app for their kids, or a doctor slash health trainer, whatever it might be. But there's lots of agents you can build. So I'd start off with that, and that literally is, if you can set aside an evening, you can do 2 agents, one personal, one work in an evening easily, and then start reflecting on that and learning just how to build agents. Then I would say, ideally, and this might be more than a week, but work out a master agent to manage the other agents. And that's where, for me, it's Claude Cowork. Because then, instead of you having to manage each agent, which still is some work, even if they do work for you, you still got to manage them all. It's like you build 20 agents, it's like 20 direct reports. There's still
Yeah.
some management to be done. But when you start building a middle management layer where an agent can manage other agents, getting more done. Now, very quickly, by the way, one of the things I see is too many people are like a rabbit in the headlights, including CEOs. Once you start doing this, you realize that you can use AI to teach you more AI.
Okay.
So for example, one of my weekly tasks with Claude is to say, okay, look at how I'm using Claude, look at how other people are using Claude, tell me what I'm missing, and work out 3 tangible ways I can get more out of Claude.
That's interesting. And I know Claude sends as well. I mean, for people who are paying for subscriptions on Claude,
Yeah.
even the cheapest one, the cheapest version, which is $20 a month, they keep sending as well, new videos to learn and so on. But I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
pick on something you said, Ben, because that might not be obvious thing for people to understand. Can you give us a specific example of a master AI agent that is managing other agents? Can you take a simple
Yeah.
example of your work?
So I'll give you probably a couple of examples, both related. So I'd say my master agent, if you use that phrase, is Claude Cowork. And in the past, before I was using Claude Cowork in that way, let's say I wanted an image for a slide. Simple task, okay? I would use Gemini. Gemini is really good at creating images. And I would work out a prompt for the image with Gemini. I chat to Gemini, it gives me a prompt, I look at it, we fine tune it, then you say turn the prompt into an image. V1 was always wrong. Typically it took 4 to 8 iterations before I was happy with the image. It would be 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to make a beautiful full slide image that I'm happy with and proud of. Now I go to Claude and say, Claude, let's brainstorm the prompt. It does it. And then I say, okay, go to Gemini and make it happen. And Claude goes to Gemini, spins up Gemini, gives it the prompt, creates the image, looks at the image, says that's not good enough, tweaks the prompt, does it again, and will iterate and iterate and iterate until it's ready. And then it brings it back and say, what do you think about this? And it's almost always been correct. So what was 20 minutes is now 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Another similar example is with the podcast. So historically, I would go to Notebook LM and I'd find 20 or 30 sources, do some Google searches, do some AI deep research, upload it into a notebook, and then work out the prompt and write the prompt and then get the podcast I wanted. Now I start with Claude. I say, I need a podcast on whatever the subject is. And the score because I've trained it. I've literally trained one agent just to make me podcasts. And so it knows how to do the research, how to pull it, how to transfer the files over to Notebook LM, how to draft the right prompt, how to upload it, how to check the quality. And it does all of that. And it just says, okay, your podcast's ready. So these are tasks that I was even, let's say 3 to 6 months ago, a power user of AI, but I was using one agent at a time. And so typically a task would be 20 or 30 minutes of my time. Most of those are now 3.
Yeah. I can see this is more advanced, once you start building your agents. And also what I'm hearing from you is you're integrating different tools as well.
Absolutely.
So you start building kind of your ecosystem of the different
Yeah.
tools and how to integrate them, right?
Yeah. And that's the beauty of that's why the world is becoming agentic. By the way, I only started using Claude Cowork 2.5 months ago, so you can achieve a lot in a short period of time. I mean, it was only launched in January, and I was a laggard because I started using it in March. But so it really is moving fast. But that's kind of the beauty is there's this thing called an MCP. It's a model context protocol. It's basically like an API, but for AI, which basically means you can get AI to plug into other software. And so for the simplest one is you have an MCP into your calendar, your email, so it can, draft emails or check your calendar. But, you can have integrations into your CRM system, into Google Slides, into spreadsheets. There's all sorts of stuff you can integrate into, and then you can start using your central AI to manage all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Ben, I know you are your own. You have your own company, you are your own business, you own your own business, and so on. So you can actually choose these tools. But many leaders I talk to are locked into Microsoft Copilot, for instance, by IT policy, right? Now, we know that their teams are using shadow IT on personal accounts because the official tools are too limited. So how should the CEO be thinking about this?
Yeah, so governance of IT, but actually start with an even bigger thing. There's a real arms race on between the tech companies. If you think about it, a year ago, ChatGPT was number one. 6 months ago, it was Gemini. Right now, it's Claude. But actually, Google made some announcements this week, for means Google might be back in the lead in 3 months' time. And but as you noticed, I didn't mention Microsoft. If it's a four-horse race, Microsoft is nearly always in position four. So that's dangerous. But I also think it's dangerous for any company to say, for the next X years, we will just use one tech stack. Because in essence, if you pick the wrong tech stack, your company will die. It's that important a decision. So what I see companies doing, and the other thing you mentioned is shadow AI. What you see in companies that say it's only Microsoft, nothing else, etc. The best employees go and use their own AI because they want to use AI, they want to do better, they want to raise the bar, and Microsoft doesn't allow them to do that. But what the risk is then is they start using, say, company data with a personal account. There's a risk you're training the LLMs for others to benefit from, or that kind of thing. But what can you? You can't fire those people. They're your best people. They're the ones that are teaching themselves AI. It's the other people you need to be firing. I mean, it's like so you can't fire them. So what you need to do is have the right governance system. And so what I see companies doing is saying, right, we need to move fast. So everyone needs permission to use AI, and we'll train everyone to get the most out of Microsoft. Let's start with that because it's not rubbish. You can do some stuff there. And then we'll say in every single team, there needs to be at least one official geek. Get the badge. You seem to love AI. It's your job to push the boundaries. If ever you find a problem you can't solve with Microsoft, tell us what software you need. Have like a one-page memo of I need to solve this problem. Microsoft can't do it. Claude can, or whatever. Gemini, whatever, another system can. Here's how we'll manage the data. Here's how we'll do it properly. And it's almost always a yes, but they typically have to use the enterprise version, which typically means data is in a much more secure moat, let's say, and it's with some sort of oversight. But if they then make it work, potentially that becomes the default tool for the company. So it's kind of having a parallel system of people that want to push the boundaries are likely to be given whatever software they need within basic constraints.
So practically, don't be overly restrictive.
Exactly.
Make sure that you have a good governance architecture. If you want to move fast, but identify the people, make sure you have the guardrails, test it first, and so on. I like that.
And then put it all in place in the next 2 weeks as well. You can't take 6 months to do this because then you still had 6 months of not implementing world-class AI.
Yeah, don't take too much time, right? So
exactly.
I always say rather than policies, make sure you have some principles in place. So it's better, it's more flexible, but continuously assess as well, because what you don't want is data leaks. It's confidential data going into.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's get a little bit into the concept of AI skills in hiring.
Yes.
So before hiring a graduate, we requested Excel skills. So how should CEOs be updating their talent acquisition and performance frameworks?
So I think there's a couple of things. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a lot of AI used where people use it to write a CV or a resume, and there's AI that companies use to screen CVs and resumes. I hear a lot of companies saying that's kind of pointless because every CV will be suitable because AI has made it suitable. So I wouldn't say that's dead, but I think what we're seeing a lot of companies do is come back to in-person interviews and to really understand and background checks. But to me, what I see is almost all companies are saying every hire should help us raise the bar with our AI skills because, it's like, why wouldn't you hire an AI native if the company knows that's the most important skill to build? So the first thing is, you need people who are AI natives. Now, what that means is if they're, a new graduate, they need to already be a power user of AI in their personal life. It might just be to manage a sports team. It might be to plan a trip around the world. It might be to analyze a subject they're fascinated by, but you need people who are edgy, curious, they teach themselves new skills, and if they hit a roadblock, they solve it using AI. That is probably the core skill set if people are fresh, like out of university or whatever. If they are mid or late career, they still need to be using AI, but ideally have some work, examples that go with it. I used AI to reduce fraud. I used AI to help the team be more creative. I used AI to wean ourselves off consultants, whatever it might be, and have really good examples there. To me, that is one of the critical things. Clearly, people still need the usual things of judgment, intelligence, emotional intelligence. Yeah, there's some stuff that you still need. But if you're assuming you want to raise the bar on the AI skills of your company, you need people who have literally been developing stuff, without asking for permission left, right, and center.
So almost put it as part of the hiring selection process and asking how they have implemented it, what they have implemented, how do they
Mhm.
challenge, how do they think about it.
Absolutely.
Brings me to the discussion. I go to, you know, muscle training session with a friend of mine who is
Yes.
a personal
Yeah.
trainer, and her daughter is graduating next year, and she told her, look,
Hmm.
now in the summer, make sure you get
Yep.
into AI courses, otherwise
Big
I'm not
time.
going to pay
Yeah.
for your tuition next year.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Another thing, just thinking out loud, is yeah, obviously a lot of companies have case studies as part of the hiring process. I would probably give people a task for which you expect them to use AI. And
Yeah.
like, you've got half an hour to solve this problem, go. And if and I do, well, can I look over your shoulder and see how you do it? And see how they interact with AI, how they discuss, how they challenge, how they quality control, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in their area of expertise, obviously. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's almost like a assessment center or assessing specifically
Yeah.
in a use case. We used to have people actually do presentations, but I think here it's more
Yeah. Yeah.
practical, giving them a use case and seeing how they handle that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I once had a job interview where I was given a flash drive and said, there's a CSV in there, find the problem. That was it. And I literally had to turn the CSV into a spreadsheet, turn it into a pivot table, work out what on earth it was all about, find the problem. I said, we'll be back in half an hour. But it's like that was a very good practical thing to say, was I good with data? But I think you could do something similar with AI, saying, right, okay, I want you to research this, develop a project plan for that, solve this problem, whatever. Here's the scenario, here's some extra data, here's some context, go.
Yeah, love that, love that.
Yeah.
So looking at the culture, and if we had to call it the agentic culture, what's the CEO's specific accountability in building an agentic
Hmm.
culture? I mean, what does the organization need to see the CEO doing, not
Hmm.
just saying?
So I think the first one is just giving everyone permission, quite frankly. And you talked about sort of principles as well. Making it just part of every single conversation. Like if the CEO is talking to an individual or to an all hands saying, "Look at this great stuff we did. AI helped us here and here, but this amazing human did something here and here." And it's just like there's an expectation that all work is done by a combination of humans and AI, and constantly sort of saying, what's the right balance? And then celebrating successes and also reflecting on weaknesses. We thought AI could solve that problem. It couldn't. We were too ambitious. Here's what we're doing differently. So I think that probably that would be the most important one because that then drives the culture. There should also be the sort of geeky just exchanges. I tried to build an agent last night. It didn't work. Any ideas? Or I just built this agent. I think it's really cool. Who wants to see it? But it's like constantly playing and just creating that culture and improving their own productivity at the same time, so that everyone kind of says, okay, that's what the CEO is doing. I can't be behind the CEO. He's an old man, woman, whatever. It's like I need to be better than the CEO, and then everyone starts saying, right, how can I impress? And there are other things too. So one of the companies I work with, they've realized that they've got a lot of smart people building agents, but they don't want only one individual to benefit from the best agents. So what they now have is a quarterly review of agents, and some agents that are built by individuals should become official agents for the company. And they're building an agent marketplace almost where people can say, oh, I need an agent for forecasting. There's a great one. And anyone whose agent becomes an official agent gets sort of a public recognition and £2,000.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah,
and
rewarding
so
that culture. Hmm.
Yeah, if you think about it, a lot of companies had referral programs in the past whereby if you refer someone and they get a job, you get £2,000 or whatever the right number is. So if you build an agent, you've just built a new employee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
I
sense.
think it reminds me a little bit of building an innovation culture, you know.
Yes, yeah.
It's be open to try new things, fail
Hmm.
fast.
Yeah.
We did actually in my days, I think it
Mm.
was HP, we did kind of what we call the crowdsourcing within the organization
Yeah,
about
yeah,
new
yeah, yeah, yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
It sounds like very similar.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's just but right now it's everyone. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think in the past maybe it was the product and engineering teams, but now HR should be doing it, finance should be doing it, ops should be doing it, sales, marketing, everyone should be innovating because AI really can benefit every part of the business.
yeah. It's not only IT, it's actually now
Exactly.
ubiquitous within the organization, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I'm cognizant of the time, Ben, so I have a final question for you. If a
Hmm.
CEO listens to this episode and does only one
Hmm.
thing differently next week, what should it be?
Build an agent. Just bite the bullet and build an agent, and then suddenly a light bulb will go off, and then you'll get the bug.
And you say build an agent, any particular product, Claude, Cowork?
I would say probably start with whichever software you're using.
Yeah.
It'll be easier. But if you really want to go all in and you have flexibility, I'd make Claude the center for now because it is the best at the moment.
Yeah, I do agree. I have actually done that jump and created my first agents, and I love it. I think once you
Nice.
start, you kind of want to do more with the time,
Big
and
time.
you get faster at it as well. So
Yeah, for sure.
thank you very much, Ben. I really enjoyed the conversation. For our viewers, we talked a little bit about the agentic mindset, but it's
Mhm.
really not about mastering technology. It's about redesigning how your organization thinks,
Mhm.
decides, and executes through AI-enabled systems. And I think we need to get all on that boat. Similar to the fax machine, it will not be
Yeah.
there. So we need to make sure that we are all AI savvy and have an agentic mindset as well.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ben.
My pleasure.